Yeah, when we first bought the house, I was really into feng shui and the colors and how colors equal certain things, and then how the chakras are associated with the colors. So, I painted my whole house to the scheme of like energy and vibrations, essentially. So I knew that this was the living room. So this is where we were going to be spending the most time together, like as a family and as friends. This is where you hang out. And so purple is connected to the crown chakra. So that's community and connection and with one another and all things. So, and it just kind of escalated from there. Slowly, everything in my life is turning purple, but that's okay. I don't hate.
I love that. Purple's my favorite color, so that's also why I was like, I love that. It's a little partial, but that's really interesting, like the connection there. And I feel like it's also calming, like it just feels good.
Hmm. Yeah, then we have so my laundry room is green because it's refreshing or whatever. And then
Oh.
my bathroom is yellow, the house it was already like that when we bought it. And at the
Mhm.
time I was like, yes, this is great because yellow is they say in feng shui that's what you want your bathroom to be because it's bright and refreshing and cheery. So like when you're getting up in the morning and getting ready for your day, it kind of like energizes you and invigorates you. But now I'm feeling like really washed out in there. I feel I take a lot of pictures in there because I'm really big into my outfits. So I like
Okay.
clothes. It's clothes are my weakness. So I'm always taking pictures of me in my daily outfit, and it just looks washed out. So I'm trying to paint that like a dark teal for absolutely no reason because I'm not really following things anymore like I did 10 years ago. But anyway, moving on. How are y'all doing? You're in Asheville, aren't you?
Yeah. Yep. I am in Asheville and today it is 72 degrees. So we are loving that. Finally warming up. It like got warm and then it got like really cold,
Yeah.
like 19 degrees. And it snowed. And then it gets like warm again and then it gets cold again. And so we're on the third warm up. And that's usually like the last one. And I'm hoping because I'm tired of the cold. I grew up in the Northeast in Connecticut. So if I wanted to live there and have that kind of cold, I would live there, but I don't. So I'm ready for the warm weather.
Yeah, it feels great here too. We're not too far from each other. I'm in North Alabama, like right at the bottom of Tennessee. So, you're in the mountains and I'm at the foothills of the same mountains.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, that's kind of why we have that shift and like even prediction of weather is like super. I
and
mean, I feel like weather prediction in general is like not always exact, but it's like extra not exact because it could be like it's 100% rain and then the mountain just totally diverts it
yes.
and we get nothing.
That's what people don't understand. I feel like I'm constantly telling people this because I don't do mindless complaints. Like I'm not the one to
Okay.
complain to about things that are not important. So, and the weather is one of those things that people love to complain about. And it's always the weather men that they're or the weather person that
Yeah.
they're complaining about. They're like, I don't think they can actually predict anything. So I'm constantly telling people we live in a valley. So it's really hard to predict the weather around mountainous areas because the mountains just, yeah, it can look like it's doing this one thing and then it hits that mountain and then it just shifts and does a completely different thing at the drop of a dime. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not one to complain about that, or like I'm not the one to complain to about things that don't matter. So I'm always telling people the best way to find out what the weather's doing is just to walk outside and get a feel for it.
Absolutely. And we really experienced that with the hurricane of like,
Yeah. Tell me
yeah, the
about that.
mountains did us dirty.
Tell me all about it.
Yeah, 50 plus days without water was crazy.
Yeah.
And then more days before it was potable. So like it got like flowing and they were like, you can shower in it. Some people still didn't want to, but that was like my one thing. I was like, I cannot. Like, I need to shower at my own house. And it was fine. It was just kind of like strong with chlorine. So, like, made my hair a little dry, but like not major compared to other things going on after that time. But it was really crazy. Like, basically, kind of like how I describe kind of to put into perspective for people is like when hurricanes hit Florida or like very flat areas, it's like if you dumped a bucket of water on the floor in your kitchen, right? It kind of has everywhere to go, and it could still, like, if you had like a lot of water, it can still rise, but it has somewhere to go. And like, especially with the ocean there, it does have this like endless place to eventually like recede into, versus if you dumped a bucket of water in your plugged up sink, it has nowhere to go. It just stays there. And then if you climb up on a ladder and drop the water into the sink from the top of the ladder, like now it's getting speed and then it has nowhere to go. And that's kind of like what happened to us. So the water, like it rained and it came down the mountain. And so it picked up speed going through like these small towns and just different places. And then it like pooled in places like around Asheville. So Asheville, Black Mountain, Swannanoa, where like I guess it's not the valley, but we're at lower elevation than like people that are higher up on the mountain. And so then it kind of just like collected and had nowhere to really go because like we have the river, which is kind of what how it kind of ventured to us, but that's obviously very different than an ocean. And so it didn't really have anywhere to recede into
Hmm.
at all. Um, and so, I mean, I'm very lucky. Like my apartment's fine because we're at a little bit higher elevation. But I had friends that lived right on the river or one of the rivers that like crested and went over its bounds, and their buildings like completely um like uninhabitable right now. Like everyone had to move out. They actually moved out of the area, but just it was just crazy. Like businesses that were like buildings and things like railroads feel permanent. Like
Yeah.
even though we know they're not, like they can go up and they can come down, but they feel relatively permanent unless you like initiate that building or demolish of that building. And to see like full houses floating away down the river or like semis floating down the river like they're like toys in a bathtub is
Hmm.
really disorienting.
Yeah.
And like to see like railroads coming up and you're like, that is a permanent structure. And it's like, well, no, it's not, like technically. Um, so yeah, it was just like a lot of things like that, and just a lot of businesses have closed or their buildings are completely gone. And as someone that runs my own business, it's completely virtual. But to think about people like one day your business in there is there, and the next, not only is your business like damaged, like the building is completely non-existent in its space. And that just like breaks my heart, honestly. As a human, but also like as someone that owns their own business, it's hard to like think about all the effort and time that goes into it, and that being like just in one day, in hours, like completely gone, and they're not reopening or re-establishing because it's just like all that for work is just not kind of possible to redo if you don't have a lot of like financial means.
Yeah, a lot of people dump everything they have into, starting this little business. And that's what Asheville is really known for, is like really small and mom and pop type things. They're not
Mhm.
like big organizations that have the extra money, like the Dollar General.
Yeah.
You just pop another one of those up real quick. But if it's something that a lot of people have taken out second mortgages on their house and cashed in their retirement and like just emptied every pocket that they have stashed away throughout their life to open up this one shop. And then if it's gone, you don't have anything to rebuild with. It's just gone. So you're starting completely from scratch again on something it took you your entire life, heart, and soul to build in the first place. And then like a lot of people out there don't have flood insurance, right? Because
So
you
that was the
insure.
really big thing is So the river, so there's two rivers that kind of go through Asheville. One is the French Broad River, and the other one is the Swananoa River. So the one I was talking about where my friend's apartment like got completely damaged, that's the Swananoa River, where like a lot of the arts district is.
Mhm.
That's where the French Broad runs through. And so the river's crested to like 30 feet.
Wow.
So like, and I think it's really disorienting. Like, obviously that sounds like a lot of water, but when you're actually looking at it and it's covering buildings or like only the tippy top of this like building is sticking out, that's more than one like story.
Hmm.
It's like peeking out is really weird. Um, but basically anything within like 100 to 150 feet of that river was submerged underwater or damaged in some way. And so that's not like they don't have flood insurance because that doesn't even seem plausible. But even things closer to the river, they didn't have flood insurance because it's not considered a risk area. Like it's not you don't live by the beach or it's not an area that gets hurricanes or like tornadoes or different like, things that could cause that type of damage. And
Yeah, the
so they
mountains are
basically
supposed to
got,
protect you.
yeah, they basically got nothing because it was like, well, you don't have flood insurance. And so too bad.
Mhm.
Um, and then kind of what you were saying about like people draining into their businesses. I mean, even if your business is profitable, I don't think a lot of people realize like for a restaurant, your profit margin is so low. And that's like just part of the industry. Like even if you have a successful restaurant because of labor and food costs and things like that. And so after COVID, like a lot of people took out loans. And so then we didn't have running water for, I think it was 2.5, I think that was 3 weeks. But then we didn't have the potable water until like over 50 days. It was like 56 days. And so if you're a restaurant,
Yeah.
you can't use non-potable water, but then you have to pay to like truck in potable water, which is really expensive. So you kind of either have to remain closed, which obviously is losing business. And we didn't get potable water for those 50 plus days. So that's more than a month time. So
Hmm.
some stuff closed because they just couldn't recuperate from being closed for a month and a half. And also that fall period, so that was right at the end of September and all of October.
Hmm.
That fall period is like our biggest tourism season because of the leaves,
Right.
all that stuff. So not only was it like, okay, you're closed for a month and a half or almost 2 months, it was also like sometimes that period pays for like the slower
Exactly.
periods. And so it was like we came out of this into our slower season. And that was also really hard for a lot of those businesses to lose like that big chunk of revenue, but also like some of their months that might be much higher than other months throughout the year.
Yeah, it's like missing out on tax season.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, that's how a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck anyway. And then they're just making do until tax season gets here. And then they get that bump that
Mhm.
helps them throughout the rest of the year until, and yeah, if you miss that, then what do you do but go backwards? Not to mention everything getting more expensive anyway.
Yeah. And so that was really hard. I mean, yeah, I mean, one of my favorite wineries, like their building was completely gone, other than like you could just see the concrete floor and the bar somehow like stayed up. And they're like, okay, yeah, we're closed, guys. Like, sorry,
Yeah,
like
I mean, no
permanently.
kidding.
Yeah. And it's a shame because a lot of the buildings in the art district are like really old and like just really nice and has a lot of art and all this stuff. And it's just like, there's also fear that like rebuilding that area will make it look like more commercial, like just kind of how that more
Mhm.
newer build stuff looks. Um,
It takes away from the charm.
yeah, yeah, it's just not the same.
I know a lot of people were like the roads were washed away, so a lot of people were cut off and completely trapped up in the mountains.
Yeah, that was another piece of like some people weren't flooded, but they couldn't leave wherever they were. And, a lot of, especially like I know Asheville's been talked a lot because we're like the most populated area in this kind of section of the state. But I mean, really, those smaller towns is where, I mean, if you drive out there, it still looks like it did, like however long ago that was, like 5 months ago. Like it looks the same. And yeah, they got trapped because if you have one road that goes in and
Mhm.
out and now it's destroyed, then what do you do?
There's not still people trapped though, right? Like we did get
No, no, no.
I know
But
there's
like
ridiculous things that you would never guess. And we talk about stuff like this for, a month after it happens, and then the rest of the world starts to forget. And people are still out there dealing with this for up to a year or longer afterwards.
that's something that like really hit home for me. And I think that's something that's come up. Like a lot of people are frustrated around here about like the response after the fires in California. They
Mhm.
deserve all relief. Like, I'm not saying they don't. Absolutely. It's horrible what's been happening out there. But because, right, it's kind of in an area that's well known, also a lot of like more famous celebrity type of people, like to just have larger platforms, have been affected by this, which I feel like is a little different than maybe other situations. It's gotten a lot more press where we feel like we're kind of like held out to dry, um, other than that like very initial response. But even the initial response, like there were people around here that have used to live in Florida, so they're kind of like used to this or know what the kind of response time for FEMA to come in and like what that kind of looks like. And they're like, as soon as the wind dies down in Florida, like FEMA's on the ground or like the Red Cross, it took days and days and days and days to get people here. Like, we didn't have gas, we didn't have water, no electricity, like nothing. And they were like, yeah, we're coming. Like, sorry, too bad, so sad. And yeah, it just kind of also put into perspective of like, kind of like what you were saying. It's on the news, and then after a month or two, like people stop talking about it. But those people are still recovering and like need relief, not like monetarily, but also just like in support in different ways, like in their economy and all these things. I mean, down the road from where I live, that road that goes next to the Swananoa River only opened like last week, 2 weeks
Wow.
ago. And like until probably like a month or so ago, there were these big um shipping containers in this intersection, like on top of each other, like kind of like crossed almost. Like it looks like an art piece, but this is in the middle of an intersection, not like
Like
on the
they
side.
got washed there.
Yeah. And so they were still there. Like no one had moved them. I mean, the road was closed, that was part of it, but yeah, like even now that road that goes this way is open, but the crossing road is only open up t until the intersection because the bridge that like connects through is still damaged and not fixed.
I bet that people who moved, the ex-Floridians, I bet they're extra pissed. They moved to the mountains to get away from hurricanes, and here they are getting a hurricane up there.
I talked to someone and they were like, I moved here from Florida a few months ago. And I was like, that's really, I'm
Unfortunate.
sorry. Not like go back there, but you brought this weather. I don't want it. We don't
Right.
like this.
And you have to find ways to laugh about it or, because I mean it's surreal, I imagine, and it really puts life into perspective. We go around living our day-to-day lives in these essentially I don't want to say fantasy world exactly, but it's like um it's a reality that doesn't actually exist. It's an illusion. We think that things are just going to keep on keeping on the way they do every single day. And, the only constant in life is change, but most of the time that change happens very gradually, very slowly, that you hardly even notice it. So you, day by day, everything looks the same. But you can look back 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and be like, wow, everything's different. But every now and then you have something that happens in the matter of a few hours that really makes some drastic change. And it puts everything into perspective of, oh, wow, we are super fragile.
Mhm.
and our way of life is super fragile, and we're just kind of lucky that everything's continuing on as normal until the moment that it's not. But I mean, eventually we all will hit that moment where it's not, and it may be in the form of a catastrophe like you guys experienced, or, the California wildfires, or, Hawaii, Ukraine. We could go on and on and on about all of the catastrophic events happening around us at all times. But it could easily also be something as smaller scale, and I don't want to take away from the devastation of what I'm fixing to say, but like losing a loved one can
Sure.
also completely, or you could be in a car accident this evening and suddenly you're a paraplegic now and you can't walk. There's 1,000 different things. And most of us, I think, hide from that. We hide from the idea of that. We don't want to think about anything like that. We just want to stay with our visors up, our shaders on, so that we don't notice any of the other things that potentially could go wrong. Some of us go the opposite direction, and we're overly concerned about all the possibilities of things that could go wrong. So now we're anxious, stressed out balls of like absolute wrecks. And either way, it's really good to like look at these things and understand and let it humble you and you know find the connection of, wow, this could be me tomorrow that doesn't have a place to live. Everything I've worked for is just absolutely gone. I have no money left, and winter's coming, and there's no heat, and there's no water, and there's no food. And that could very easily be any one of us at any given time. So I'm not saying, like, definitely we have to find a place of mindful acceptance and surrender to our, mortality so that we can be liberated from the anxiety of the what ifs and possibilities that could come along and learn how to enjoy the moment that we're in and that we have today, because right now is all we ever have, right?
Yeah, I think that's really what this experience has given me. One, a sense of community and a sense of like where I live. I moved to Asheville in 2022 at the end of the year. So I haven't been here super long. But it kind of showed like this is a really important place and it's really special, and things like you take for granted of like, okay, now it's not here, or people have left, or just different aspects of like, liking where you're living or the community feel, even though it took a natural disaster to feel that, like it's still, like you said, it kind of humbles you of like, okay, like this is a special place, like, and just what people did for others in the community. Like, there's a church right next to my apartment, and they basically built these like makeshift showers with like propane tanks and like water, like tanks, and just this whole thing for free use for people to come by and use, because it was just like if we have the resources, then like we should share that. Or people sending things like food and different things down, and just, yeah, I think even the simple things we take for granted in life of like being able to take a shower or
Mhm.
flush the toilet, that is something I will never take for granted ever again.
Yeah,
Because I've learned the back of the tank of your toilet, it's a lot of water.
yeah,
It's a lot of water, and you basically need the whole tank or like most of it to flush
yep.
anything of substance. So it's just crazy of like, yeah, walking down to the pool and filling up like, I'm thankful we lived in an apartment that had a pool and we could walk and get water to put in the toilet so we could at least like kind of use it,
Yeah.
because otherwise, yeah, that's a whole different situation. But just things you take for granted of like not a big deal, or like using your computer, or something we really didn't expect was, you know, our cell service was out for days and days and days. That was really humbling, because I think even in like different disasters, like that feels something that's a constant, like communication. And that was cut out completely.
Hmm.
And my partner and I don't live together. And so it was like, we'd be like, okay, we're meeting
Oh
here
no.
at 1 o'clock. So like, and you just have to do that. And like, it sounds silly, like thinking about it, of like, well, yeah, like that's kind of eventually before phones. Like that was how it was. But we've come
Scary
so
now
accustomed,
though.
right? But like we have come so accustomed to instant communication, access to people and information at all times
Mhm.
that it was like, okay. And it was actually kind of nice. Like, not
Sure.
necessarily like not being able to tell my family I'm okay, but not being connected to the internet 24/7
Mhm.
was a nice reprieve.
Yeah, there's a whole wave of people going back to like flip phones that don't have internet because it is very liberating, and there's a lot of benefits to it. It lowers anxiety and stress because you don't have that constant influx of information and flashing, notifications. I just got a new phone and it is so overwhelming. My husband tried to buy me a new phone for Valentine's Day and I was just like, "What? Huh? He sprung it on me and I was like, it took him like 3 years to talk me into buying a new laptop. Okay. And so he went through all of the reasons why, and I was like, oh, okay. So like the following week, he had finally talked me into it. And we go up there, and the lady running uh the counter at the Spectrum store where we have our plan, I used to work with her, so I knew her, and everything was very laid back. And she was like, "Why did it take you so long?" And she was like, "What was the problem?" And I couldn't begin to like articulate what had me so stressed out about getting a new phone. And then I got a new phone, and just the amount of notifications, because I had everything situated on my old one where everything was turned off and there was no notifications. I got like messages and like text messages, and that was it. No other notifications for anything. And now I'm like drowning. So every time I look at my phone, it's got like 25, and I'm cutting them off as they come up, but there's
To
just so
wait for them to
many.
like show itself.
Exactly. They have to pop up before I can cut them off. So every time I look at my phone, I have like 25 notifications in my drop down menu, and I just like this overwhelming stress and anxiety. And I'm like, and I just put it right back down. I'm like, I don't have time for this right now. So, but anyway, long story short, yeah, phones can be super um stressful just in and of themselves. So it is nice to not have that, but also we want the communication aspect, you
Right.
want to be
The
able to.
originality of the function.
Right. The text and the phone call and maybe some GPS. The rest of it we could probably really be better off without, for sure.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, music/podcasts, GPS, yeah, phone text like would do me
Yeah, music's
fine.
also definitely a necessity.
Yeah, I talked to someone, actually, we recorded a podcast episode yesterday, and she was saying she's really like gotten off of social media in general. And so I love that for
Mhm.
her. But she was saying she also puts her phone, which you can just do like in your settings, to put it in grayscale
Okay.
so that it's not as like dopamine
Vibrant. Yeah.
enriching, like it doesn't pull you in. Because she's like, sometimes I even open it and like she's like, ew. Like, it's like great, like, oh, and like puts it down. And I was like, I love that. She's like, yeah, I turn it off she's like, I allow myself to like scroll on Instagram once a week. And like, so I turn the color on and like whatever. But other than that, to help with that, like she turns it into grayscale. And I was like, that's a really good idea. I
Uh,
never really thought about like the color aspect in that, but I did turn off my I guess not sound because forever I had my phone on vibrate like for
mm,
messages and stuff.
me too.
But I started turning it on silent and I just keep it on silent because mostly for like texts, especially because I see clients one-on-one, and usually my phone's on my desk, and just hearing the like vibration like
Hmm.
distracts me.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, and now I'm not listening, or like it just my brain like is now like focused on or I want to know what it says, even though it usually doesn't matter, but now it's
Hmm.
like in my brain.
Hmm.
And so I just turn on silent and I turn it upside down because also the light flash, like when it turns on, I'm like, I've got like a squirrel brain. I'm like, ooh. Uh, but yeah, like having those slight modifications is really helpful. And because even my partner was saying, he was like, it's so hard when like I'm trying to focus and it's just like buzz, 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 and whether it's text or just like you were saying, random notifications that don't even matter. So now I'm distracted and it wasn't even important.
Hmm.
Or not even a person like trying to talk to me. It's like my bank app or something. Um,
Google with the latest article on news.
Yeah, like something super not important or not something I
Longest
need
thing
to
about
know
me.
about right now, like in this second. And so I told him, I was like, at least during the weekday, like turn it on silent. And then like I was like, if it's me, like I know you'll get to it when you're done with work or when you're whatever, like it's fine. But that and I turned off notifications for social media because that was also something that stressed me out of like because even I feel bad. Like I like if I send my partner like a bunch of reels, and because I feel like it's either you see nothing, like I see nothing I want to send to him, or they're like back to back to back to
15.
back to back,
Yep.
and I feel bad if it's like I know on the other end it's like buzz, 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 buzz. Like that's so annoying.
Yeah.
So
If I
like
get more than three, so if I send, because like, you're right, either you'll see absolutely nothing or there'll be like 15, 25 in a row. If I send my husband three, I'm like, well, I have to get off of it now entirely. I need to put my phone down because three's plenty. And if I keep scrolling, I'm going to find more that I absolutely have to send him. And then we're all stuck in this loop. Like
right.
last night, he works a lot, and lately it's been a lot more because they're short staffed at home or
Mhm.
at home. He might as well live there. But so he has like 6 hours total he works 12-hour swing shifts with
Oh
an
wow.
hour and a half drive to
Ooh.
and from. So, you can do the math there. We have like 8 hours to work with, and he has to sleep during those 8 hours. So we really were working with like 3 to 4 hours a day tops, that we have to spend with him. And last night he was like, I was like, what do you want to do when we get the kids in bed? He was like, I want to watch some anime. I don't know if you're into that. You kind of seem like you might be, but
Not like a lot, but like I'm not against it. It's also I feel like a lot of it's on Netflix and I don't have Netflix. So that's part of it.
okay, well, Crunchyroll is where it's at. But
Okay, got it.
anyway, so we get in bed and he's like showing me TikTok after TikTok after TikTok because that's what he does. He sends them to me, but I don't get on social media like at all. So, and I am very anti checking my messages on because that was very time consuming for me. People sending me Instagram reels and TikToks through the
That's why I
messenger.
turned the notifications off. I was like, okay,
Yes.
because when I'm ready and have the time, I will look at it.
Yeah. So he pulls up and he'll so he knows I don't look at them. So he'll send them to me throughout the day and then at night he's like, "Let's watch these together," which is way better than
Yeah.
me watching it independently of him and vice versa. Uh but I was so irritated. I was like, "We don't have time for this. You promised me anime and we're sitting here. I don't want to scroll on TikTok with you." Even though we weren't scrolling, it was like very
Yeah,
cute.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's we should everybody should be turning off all of their notifications for all of the things
Mhm.
and curating their feed to when my kids love to be grounded because that's like, wow, that I take their devices away and it's like, wow, look at this earth. Look at this planet. There's things and life and stuff and they'll like
That's so funny. And that makes me sad for like just kids like growing up with so much technology. Like it's almost unavoidable, like with school and things like that. It's
mhm.
just
They're learning though. They're way more informed than I suppose we were. I don't know. There's like a
Mm.
so like my generation, I'm pretty sure I'm a little bit older than you. Um, we like I didn't know that there was a whole world out there until like fifth or sixth grade. I think like 9/11, I was in fifth grade in 9/11. So I think that was the first, also that was around the Bush Al Gore election.
Mm.
So my school did this whole thing about this election, and I was like, "What? Government? What's that?" And then 9/11 happened, and I was like, "You mean the USA is not the only country? What are you talking about?" And, like that was before internet. We really didn't have
Yeah,
access to. So you have to think if my generation was kind of blindsided by the rest of the world existing at all, you can only imagine what our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation felt about the world. It was their little village community was the only thing that existed at all. But my 9-year-old, he's in fourth grade, okay, can tell me all sorts of stuff about the whole entire world. He kills in trivia. Let me tell you what. And it's because of the access to the internet that they have. They're so much more advanced in so many different ways than we, and of course that varies kid by kid,
sure.
absolutely, but I'm just talking very generically. The community aspect though that you were talking about, I wanted to touch on that because community is something that we are all just deprived of.
Mhm.
And what's the word?
Like isolated.
Yeah, yeah, we're very, gosh, there's a word that is on the tip of my tongue that I can't even think of how to describe it. Starved. We are, oh, which is funny because we do need to probably get around to talking about food eventually
Yes.
and what you do and whatnot. But community is something we're all starved for. There's a pandemic of loneliness. Nobody knows how to connect with each other anymore. Nobody knows how to communicate and enter the, for example, like there's a third places. Are you familiar with third places in your
Yeah. Hmm.
Awesome. It's becoming more of a concept over here in the States. In Europe, I think they've pretty well held on to those historically. So for people who don't know, your first and second place are the places you spend the most time at, so probably home and work or school. And then your third place is a place where you can go and just hang out with the community, t with friends, play games, just, socialize, and they
Hmm.
need to be free and everybody should have them. And that's where you kind of establish your connection to the community and people and each other and you build these bonds because during work and school and all of that, you don't really have a whole lot of time and opportunity to build bonds with people and connect with people and learn how to actually communicate in a normal way, which a lot of us are struggling with for sure. And but I think technology, even though it's done a lot to bring us together in a lot of ways, has also further isolated us from one another. So I think fixing the community aspect and learning how to become more in tune and connected to your own community and your village, 'cause where are the villages? Everybody needs a village, and everybody's like, where are they? I'm just drowning in life. And for a long time, I think a lot of us thought that something was wrong with us if we were drowning in life, just your basic everyday things, like, are you kidding me? I have to figure out how to live, go to work, go to school, do whatever the things, the responsibilities, and then also I have to figure out how to do all my own laundry and cook all of my meals and clean my apartment. And I like there are people who can do this, therefore something's wrong with me. Why can I not do this? And that's not true. None of that was supposed to ever be a one-person job. We're supposed to have villages, and we really have to start learning how to get more in tune with the people around us and helping each other out. And that means being a lot more lenient with people, I think. Gentle, compassionate. We're so quick to be combative and everybody's familiar with what red flags are now. Whereas 15, 20 years ago, we kind of understood that this person was kind of toxic, but we didn't have the names to put to them, like narcissist or abusive techniques, gaslighting, So now we're aware that red flags are a thing. So when we encounter a red flag, we just throw up all the walls and leave. But everybody has red flags from here, like every now and then. Nobody's perfect. So
It's
we're all,
so Yeah, it's so interesting you say that because that's a conversation I had recently with someone of like, right, the awareness around these things is super important and is great and all of this stuff. But I think it's also like we use it as a cop out a little bit, right? There are people that are truly toxic and don't want to have a conversation and these, right? Like there are exceptions to the rule. But it also like I think it gives us like, oh well, yep, nope, like nope. And it's like, well, we have those same things as well. Maybe they're different actual things, but like, right, no one's perfect. But like working with people is like what relationship is and gives us the opportunity to grow with others, right? Whether that's a romantic relationship or a platonic like friendship. Um, and sometimes people aren't aware of, I don't want to say not aware of their behaviors, but how they affect others or things like just things I've worked through of like things the way I approach things just because of the way I was raised, right? Not really
Mhm.
necessarily good or bad, but just maybe like, I don't know. Like I have been working through like people pleasing tendencies, right? And so I think you could look at that as like, oh, well, she doesn't I don't want to say like support herself, but she can't make decisions for herself or blah blah blah. Like right earlier when I
Sure.
before I did a lot of this work, and you could walk away and be like, okay, nope, sorry, bye. But like something me and my partner have worked a lot on is like working through that and like,
Mhm.
yes, that is something I need to improve on. And I think I've made a lot of progress. Obviously, there's more to be more to be had.
Sure.
Um, but I think we use like these red flags or some of these words as like a cop out or also like extend them into things that actually don't meet the definition. Like I've talked to a couple therapist friends that really hate like some of the trendy stuff online, kind of
Sure.
pop psychology. And like kind of a little controversially, she was like, I really hate the saying, oh my God, what was it? Oh, I'm not responsible for your feelings or your reaction. And she was like, again, yes, if you're being like, if it's an unwarranted reaction to something you're doing that's completely normal or calm, like, sure, right? Yes, you can't control someone's reaction. But if you're being, I don't know if we can curse on here.
You
If you're
can.
being, okay, if you're being an asshole, then like, or you're engaging in behavior that is not like, I don't know, like if you're in the wrong and they're upset about it, you can't just be like, well, I'm not responsible for their reaction or their feelings. It's like,
Mhm.
well, no, like that's not what that means. Like there's more. We kind of like put these things to kind of almost like you're saying, isolate of like, nope, it's everyone else's problem,
Mhm.
right? You're not always right or wrong. Like no one is, but it's kind of an easy way to be like, okay, no, like that person just wasn't right. That person's toxic. That person narcissist. And it's like, okay, okay,
Who's
like
left?
right, exactly. Like the conversation and growth, I think, is an important piece of like being able to identify these things is important, of course, and like we can't use those things as a cop out to like not grow and like challenge ourselves and others
Yeah, and nothing's universal. So ever, 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 ever.
ever.
So for sure, like yeah, it depends on the who you're talking to because
Absolutely.
absolutely some people that is really good advice. You're not responsible for everybody else's reactions to you. But at the same time, if you keep getting the same reactions and you're the common denominator, perhaps you should make some adjustments.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like it's easy to just be like, okay, well, it's not my fault. And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, well, if that's always, yeah, always the case, or you're exhibiting the same behavior and multiple people are having the same reaction versus like that one-off person, like, yeah, maybe we need to turn inward some.
Always turn inward. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with the pop psychology thing.
Sure.
One of the ones that get on my nerves is the ADHD cleaning. Like everybody thinks they have ADHD and they'll give you like they'll make TikToks and reels about how their ADHD and I'm watching it and I'm like, you were totally, I don't know. I don't know, man. That's not exactly what ADHD is, but so I come in contact with people all the time that talk about, oh, my ADHD brain. And I'm like, you are the furthest thing from ADHD I've ever met in my life. But you just smile and nod. You're like, okay.
Right.
But the problem is that it takes away from the people who actually are struggling with ADHD. And there's the word struggling, because if you're not struggling, you probably don't actually have it. If you're like struggling with like your basic needs to live, because that's like one of the telltale signs, executive dysfunction. But another thing, people really like their cop outs. There's a few people that I know that refuse to work on themselves at all. And so I'm a big believer in okay, wait, let me in order here. Uh you'll bring something to their attention that's a problem between you and them. You're like, hey, I've noticed that this right here is becoming a problem in our relationship. I just wanted to discuss it. Let's see if we can troubleshoot this. And they just throw up their hands and go, I'm sorry, I'm the problem. I need therapy. I don't know what to do. I need therapy. I need therapy, but I can't afford therapy. So I'm just stuck. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, calm down. I'm here trying to help. I'm here trying to discuss. Like, no, I don't have a PhD or anything in therapy, but hi, I'm your friend. We can talk this out. We can find solutions. We can try new things. And like, I need therapy. There's nothing we can do until I get therapy. I just need therapy. And it's like, well, I think you're just trying, that's a cop out. That's a cop out. You don't want to work on your things.
Yeah, because it's easy to say like, well, I can't change anything until I can do this thing. And if that thing's not
Mhm.
accessible to you, then like it's kind of a moot point, right? Which I do think mental health services should be more accessible. But
Absolutely.
like, yeah, if you're saying, oh, well, I can't do this until I get this thing, but that isn't a thing that you have access to or are working towards saving up to do, or like, right, there's no plan to like, oh, I'm starting this in a month.
Hmm.
It's kind of like, well, that's kind of not, yeah, it kind of, that's not really like a reason to not talk about
Hmm.
it.
And like try to figure out what you can do now, because newsflash, not all therapists are great. And just because you get
True.
there,
True.
just because you do finally find your way into therapy doesn't mean that it's going to do anything to help you at all. I mean, like it could, it absolutely could. I believe in therapy, and but I also believe that we should probably rework a lot of those systems. I myself have been in therapy before, and it wasn't a great situation, especially if you've been doing the work and you're aware of your like, because where I was at that point is I had been working on myself for a very long time, and I had kind of like hit a plateau. So, and then I got with this therapist, and basically she just kept telling me that I was whiny and needed to suck it up. And then she ghosted me. So, I mean, like, if you're dealing with a therapist that also needs to do the inner work themselves, because, people can't help you. They can only help you as far as they've helped themselves, or else they can't even understand the language that you're speaking, even if you're both speaking English, and that's the thing that we have to remember about communication, is that just because me and you both speak English doesn't mean that we are speaking the same language.
Absolutely. And I think something interesting you mentioned about like therapy isn't always the answer. I've even had therapists tell me this, like colleagues that are like, I'm a therapist, or sorry, I'm a therapist, therapy's important. And it's not the answer to everything. Like the missing of community, to kind of go back to that,
Yeah.
is also a piece. Like, yes, it's important to have a safe space, but also like some of these things can be solved if you had like other people in your life to be able to talk about them with, like
Yep.
things that are not, you know, crisis or just like really, deeper traumas or, that kind of stuff. Like sometimes some of that can be solved by like other people in our lives and that share identities or share different things that we have in common. Um, yeah. And I thought that was like an interesting take from a therapist that they're
Mhm.
like, this is not the answer to everything. Well, it's my job. It's also like the awareness of the bigger picture.
Yeah, our culture is definitely a big problem for most of us. We've sectioned ourselves off. We've um, the way we do things. We everything's so hush hush, like all of the really important matters, nobody wants to discuss. We've been taught to keep everything bottled up, to if we, don't be an oversharer. Don't tell everybody about your problems. Don't hang your dirty laundry. Don't. It's like, well, you know what? I'm human. We are all humans. And being a human is ridiculously messy by default. And if we could all just learn how to talk about those things, then maybe it'd be a lot easier. And that's why a lot of people feel like they need a therapist so that they can have that safe space
Mhm.
to be able to open up and communicate because we don't have those safe spaces for the most part. Every day I encounter people who I know, like I have to tiptoe around conversation with them. I have to be very particular about what I say and how I say it.
Mhm.
And I have to make sure that, small talk only. Only small
Right.
talk. We're only allowed to talk about things that are uh, on the surface area. We're not allowed to even get ankle deep into
Mhm.
anything of importance that might have emotional ties or um, activate any kind of emotional response because they will absolutely just dip.
Yeah. I really feel like this about a lot of big world issues right now of people are so set on their side that they're correct, that they're not open to any conversation around it. Like not even like
Hmm.
me or someone else trying to convince them, just like
Just
having a
discussion.
conversation, a discussion about whether it's the other side of the gray area or the nuance, because there always is nuance of things that they're just so closed-minded, and it's the same people that are yelling at other people for being closed-minded, and maybe they are, but it's like, well, so are you. It's just about different
Takes
things.
one to know
Like,
one.
yes. And it's made me feel very isolated in our political climate because I'm like, guys, like, can you, but it's because, yeah, if once you've swung so hard the other way, then maybe your views are different, but you're just as close-minded and not open to discussion about them.
Uh-huh. Cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
That's the
Yeah,
word. That's the term that's giving all of us all of our problems in our life mostly.
pretty much. And like not realizing the connection that's really there, like how similar we really all are, even if
Hmm.
our stances are different.
Yeah. While we're on the subject of therapy, I think we could slightly shift over to food
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, since we last talked, I've shifted my practice a little bit. So, for those listening, I am a dietitian, and I work mostly with folks that struggle with eating disorders. But now my practice also focuses mostly on serving neurodivergent folks. This has been kind of a subsection that I just really enjoy because I have ADHD and am neurodivergent and find that the relationship with food and the way we understand our own hunger cues and different things just is different for folks that are neurodivergent, whether that is ADHD or autism or OCD or kind of any of the other many diagnoses that fall under that umbrella. And I actually just next week I am bringing on another team member, and so she will be starting with me to take more clients. But it's just been really interesting to see the intersection of like how neurodivergence affects food, especially in the areas like you were mentioning, executive dysfunction being a big piece. And like I have a lot of clients that come to me that say, oh, like I'm struggling with binge eating. And it's
Mhm.
actually not really binge eating, but more like, okay, like not understanding hunger cues. And that's where we get to, and time blindness of now it's 3 o'clock and we haven't eaten. So yes, we're going to eat more than we usually would in one sitting because it's 3 p.m. and we haven't eaten today, and kind of working on that consistency around food and how to like work with their brain to like make these tasks that are really hard for them potentially of like making a list, going grocery shopping, like all these tasks that it takes to actually make food for ourselves
Mhm.
and make it a way that works for them as well as considering things like texture and taste sensitivities or maybe we have some things that we need to work around. there, but it's just been something I've really been enjoying kind of niching down into that area because I feel like it's a little bit of an area that is missed right now. I have a lot of clients, unfortunately, that come to me and said, I went and saw a different dietitian and they were great. There was nothing wrong with them. They weren't a bad practitioner, but similar to a therapist, not everyone's the right fit for you.
They
And
didn't
so it doesn't,
understand. They're like, what do you mean you have food aversions to everything?
right. And it's kind of one of those things that, and some neurodivergent folks do prefer neurotypical providers to like for some more structure to help with that. But I think sometimes it cut like it's yeah if you it's kind of like if you know you know or if you don't you don't like you have to experience it to just like understand. I had a client tell me, which this was kind of before I made this shift and what kind of prompted it, and she had ADHD and autism and mentioned that she's like, I really appreciate that you just like understand certain things that like sound really stupid, like, and I was like, they're not stupid, but to her, she was like, they sound silly to a neurotypical person because they just don't get it. Kind of like you were saying, like, it's just, they're just like, I don't understand. She's like, of course, I don't want to leave my keys in the fridge, but somehow they always end up there. And like the suggestion of, we'll just hang them on the hook. It's like, well, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. It's like telling someone with an eating disorder, like, we'll just eat more. It's like, great, thanks. That's super helpful. Like, it's like, yeah, obviously, I know that that would be a good solution, but clearly that's not working.
Yeah, or you wouldn't if I could figure this if it was that simple, I wouldn't have ended up here talking to you.
Right, right. I could have figured that part of my own.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband's neurotypical and I'm not. And I have food is a really big struggle for me and always has been. Uh, I have a ton of food aversions that just
Mhm.
pop up out of nowhere, so they're not consistent all the time. They just I don't know what causes them. It's just,
Mhm.
oh, look, I'm having a hard time eating today. And like I'll put things in my mouth and just
Yep.
like I'll probably I don't usually spit it out, but I won't take another bite and yeah, it's a very, very common food is a very common neurodivergent problem that they have to navigate. So I'm super glad that you decided to do that as somebody who is also neurodivergent and can help bridge some of those gaps and just explore the subject with your like that in itself fascinates me just to be able to
Mhm.
sit with somebody who gets it and explore it, and just discuss it and throw noodles at the wall together and see what you can find because some people we have to find essentially like life hacks that work with our specific uh challenges to kind of like make them easier. Like my husband's like, just make the sandwich. What is the issue? Just go make the sandwich. And it's like, overwhelming for me to go make the sandwich because he sees it as one task. You go in the kitchen, you make a sandwich. To me, it's like 18 different tasks.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what we dive into of like, okay, like meal prepping. Okay, well now we have to start all the way back and I need to clean out the fridge to make
Yeah.
room for the groceries. And then we need to make the list or we need to decide what we want. We need to make the list. We need to go to the store. And then before we cook, we need to unload the dishwasher because otherwise, like all these steps that are like,
And then you're 3 hours in and you haven't even made the sandwich yet. So
yep.
it, it can get really overwhelming really quickly. And especially if you're already that's the thing with me. It's like, okay, you say just go in the kitchen and make a sandwich. I don't have 3 hours to dedicate to making a sandwich.
It's so interesting because that's like something recently of like, oh, people don't like when I have my first client and I'm like, okay, so in order to have enough time to shower, plus or minus if I'm washing my hair, okay, I need this amount of time. And then I need this amount of time in the gym. Okay, and then I want to sit for this long on the couch to drink my coffee. Okay, so I need to get up at this time
Hmm.
so I can see my client at noon. Like it's like this whole like mental gymnastics to figure out like that very first step.
What are the most common? Well, I guess you listed off the most common things you see earlier, like the binging, which isn't actually binging usually.
Yeah, kind of, yeah, binging or overeating because of like in one sitting because of just restriction, not
Hmm.
necessarily like on purpose, but because of hunger cues or time blindness. I would say kind of not knowing particular hunger cues. So for a lot of neurotypical people, growling of the stomach is their hunger cue. For a lot of neurodivergent people, they don't feel that. And so they have hunger cues, but they're ones we don't necessarily associate with hunger. So
Hmm.
like headache, nausea, fatigue, extreme tiredness, um, stomach ache, increased trouble focusing like above their baseline, and hangry can be one of them. But yeah, there's a lot of these other ones that sometimes we don't associate with hunger, but kind of through the process, like learning about that and then like from there, being able to associate those with hunger and kind of pay attention to those more, I would say is what we work on a lot, as well as like redefining what healthy means. So, like, not villainizing convenience foods and like what can we add instead of what do we need to take away? Like, okay, sure. Like, if you really like this one food that you eat all the time, like, that's no big deal. But like, yeah, what can we add to it to maybe make it a more balanced meal
Yeah.
instead of saying, okay, we need to eat this less?
Yes, I agree completely. Diet culture is so steeped in deprivation, and that is the opposite way that you need to go. You need to worry about like crowding out instead of, so yeah, adding to instead of taking from. Um, I'm really bad about hyperfixation meals.
Mm,
And so I'll find a hyperfixation meal. And for example, right now it is yogurt and peanut butter. So just a single serve vanilla yogurt with Jif makes this little single serve peanut butter cups.
mhm,
And so I'll do a scoop of peanut butter and a scoop of yogurt, and I'll eat that every single morning for breakfast and have for months and months and months and months, which is great for a while, but eventually your body starts to rebel against that.
mm,
So, like,
yep.
used to, I had these homemade protein bars that I made. And so that's what I had for breakfast every single day for like 3 years. And then it started to get to where once, every time I ate one, my heart would start racing. And
Mm,
which is weird, I guess. I don't know.
interesting.
Yeah. And then I changed to oatmeal. And then I have a bowl of oatmeal every single morning for like 3 years. And then it got to where every time I ate a bowl of oatmeal, my heart would start racing. And I've started noticing it happening with my yogurt and peanut butter. So I've started trying to work in other meals in there. So I do a lot of protein shakes
Mm,
because
mhm,
with food inversions, don't apply to liquids. So sometimes I can't eat food, but I never have a problem drinking food.
mm.
And that's
Yep.
probably it's probably like a little bit of neurodivergency, but that's probably also like trauma, food trauma.
Mm.
You see a lot of that, people dealing with trauma around food and body image and
Yeah, definitely. We definitely do a lot of work around that. And yeah, usually it's kind of unpacking the like preconceived notions we're fed on social media and like by society, diet culture, like you mentioned. Um, and yeah, whether that being particular food groups, types of foods, convenience foods, or processed foods, however you want to kind of phrase that. And kind of being like, it's all fine. Like, it's more about variety. Like, right, too much of anything is not good for us. Like, it's more about, yeah, what can we add in to create some more diversity in our intake than like villainizing certain foods. Because yeah, if you ate only apples all day, all the time, like that wouldn't be great either. Like
Mhm.
it can be applied to any of these things. It's just yeah, we've been kind of fed this one narrative, or it is ever shifting. It's not really one, but it aligns in that diet culture kind of mentality for sure.
Oh yeah, and then it was really bad until I don't know, probably like the 2015, 20 teens, mid 20 teens is when we really started shifting from this attack on bodies and how they quote unquote should look into more body positivity. So things are improving, and we have the internet and social media to thank a lot for that because it's allowing us a voice to communicate and talk and discuss these ideas that we can't really always discuss in real life because we're going back to the surface level area things
Yep.
only
Hmm.
culture that we have, which
Yep.
a lot of cultures have.
Sure.
Um, namely more of like I feel like Western culture, which is what we are, is looped into European culture a lot.
Mm.
But I feel like a lot of European countries are a lot more open than we are over here in the States. I think we would, because we're founded by Puritans, and
Right.
I think we would actually align more with how the Eastern world is kind of traditional and proper, and there's things that you do and there's things that you don't do, and there's ways to talk and there's ways to not talk.
Yep.
Whereas like European culture is a little bit more loose and laid back
Mm.
with things.
Yeah, definitely. I don't mean to cut our conversation
You're okay.
short. I just have a client I need to get on a call with.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you came and talked to me today. We can do it again. Oh, we are doing again on your podcast.
Yes. Yes,
I
yes.
did get that scheduled finally, but so I'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks, and
Okay.
everybody can go listen to us continue our chat over there. But tell people where they can find you.
Yes. I am not really on social media, but you can go look if you want to at sammyb.nutrition, SAMMIB.nutrition, as well as the podcast is Nourishing Neurodivergence Pod on Instagram, and then Nourishing Neurodivergence on wherever you listen to podcasts.
Awesome. So we'll have that all linked below.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you enjoy
Bye.
your day.